I never thought refusing to approve a 22-year-old's reckless software deployment would cost me my career. As senior security analyst at TechVantage Solutions, I'd built my reputation on protecting our government contracts from cyber threats. When CEO Jonathan Hartwell's son Bryce waltzed into our secure facility demanding immediate cloud accesses for his revolutionary project, every alarm bell in my head screamed danger. But standing firm against nepotism seemed right. 24 hours later, federal agents surrounded our building, and I realized my firing had saved more than just my integrity. My name is Rachel, and 5 years ago I walked into TechVantage Solutions as a junior analyst fresh from Georgetown University's cybersecurity program. The company occupied 3 floors of a gleaming glass tower in Arlington, Virginia, just 8 miles from the Pentagon. We specialized in protecting classified information for defense contractors, and our clients trusted us with secrets that could reshape global security. I'd clawed my way up from entry-level to senior security analyst through countless 18-hour days and weekend emergency calls. My cubicle walls displayed certifications in network forensics, threat assessment, and classified systems management. The work fascinated me because every decision carried real consequences. One wrong click could expose submarine locations or satellite intelligence to hostile nations. My personal life told a different story. 2 years ago, my marriage to David collapsed under the weight of my demanding career. He couldn't understand why I'd leave dinner parties to respond to security alerts or spend vacations studying new encryption protocols. The divorce left me raising our 8-year-old daughter, Emma, alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Alexandria. Her private school tuition consumed half my salary, but watching her excel in advanced mathematics made every sacrifice worthwhile. The office buzzed with nervous energy that Tuesday morning when CEO Jonathan Hartwell announced his son would join our leadership team. Hartwell had built TechVantage from a garage startup into a $100 million operation, earning respect through technical brilliance and unwavering ethical standards. His graying temples and careful speech reflected decades of handling sensitive government relationships. Marcus Rivera, our IT director, stopped by my desk around 10 o'clock. We'd developed a strong professional friendship over 3 years of late-night security audits and crisis management. His weathered hands spoke to 15 years of wrestling with stubborn servers and temperamental firewalls. "Heard about the new innovation director?" Marcus asked, his voice carrying subtle concern. "Hartwell's kid, what's the story?" Marcus glanced around the open office space before leaning closer. "Stanford, MBA, zero technical background. Word from HR is he's pushing for major system overhauls." I understood his worry immediately. Government contracts demanded strict security protocols developed over decades of trial and error. Innovation without proper safeguards could destroy everything we'd built. That afternoon brought my first encounter with Bryce Hartwell. He strode into our secure wing wearing an expensive Navy suit and confidence that seemed borrowed rather than earned. His perfectly styled blonde hair and manicured appearance suggested someone more comfortable in boardrooms than server rooms. "Rachel Thompson, I need immediate access to all client databases for my optimization project," he announced without introduction or pleasantries. My training kicked in automatically. "I'd be happy to help with proper authorization. Which specific datasets do you need, and what's the intended use case?" His blue eyes flashed with irritation. "Look, I'm revolutionizing how this company handles data analytics. My machine learning platform will transform defense intelligence processing, but I need comprehensive access to develop proper algorithms." Red flags erupted in my mind. Machine learning required massive datasets, often processed through cloud computing resources that existed outside our security perimeter. That sounds innovative, but classified information has specific handling requirements. We'd need Department of Defense clearance review before any new processing methods. Bryce's jaw tightened. "You're talking about bureaucratic delays that could cost us months. My father brought me here to modernize operations, not get bogged down in outdated procedures." These procedures protect national security, I replied evenly. I'm required by law to verify authorization before granting access to classified systems. He stepped closer, invading my personal space in a way that felt deliberately intimidating. I don't think you understand who you're talking to. This company belongs to my family and you work for us. Something cold settled in my stomach. This wasn't professional disagreement anymore. It was a threat wrapped in corporate hierarchy. But my father's voice echoed in my memory. Colonel James Thompson had spent 25 years in Air Force intelligence, and he'd taught me that duty transcended personal convenience. I understand perfectly, I said quietly, and my duty is to protect classified information regardless of who's asking for it. Bryce's face flushed red before he spun on his heel and stalked away. I watched him disappear toward the executive offices, knowing I'd just made a powerful enemy. Later that evening, as I reviewed routine security logs from my home computer, anomalous activity caught my attention. Someone had accessed multiple classified databases using CEO-level credentials at 11:47 p.m. the previous night, well after normal business hours. The access patterns showed rapid downloading of entire file structures rather than targeted research queries. My blood ran cold as I traced the activity. Bryce had used his father's executive access codes to bypass every security measure I'd insisted upon. Worse, the downloaded files had been transferred to an unauthorized personal laptop that had never undergone security screening. I sat in my living room staring at the evidence on my screen while Emma slept peacefully down the hall. The choice before me felt impossibly stark: report the CEO's son for a federal crime or allow classified information to remain compromised. Outside my window, the lights of Washington, D.C. twinkled like distant stars, each one representing someone whose safety might depend on the secrets we protected. The decision wasn't really a choice at all. Wednesday morning arrived gray and overcast, matching my mood as I drove through Arlington's traffic-clogged streets. I'd spent the previous night documenting Bryce's unauthorized access, creating an encrypted file that detailed every violation with timestamps and digital fingerprints. I found Bryce in the break room surrounded by 3 junior analysts who hung on his every word about disrupting traditional cybersecurity paradigms. Danny Walsh, a eager 24-year-old fresh from MIT, seemed particularly captivated by promises of cutting-edge projects and rapid advancement. "Bryce, we need to discuss yesterday's database access," I said, keeping my voice professional despite the churning in my stomach. He barely glanced up from his coffee. "What about it?" "Classified files were downloaded to an unauthorized device using your father's credentials. That's a serious security breach." The junior analysts shifted uncomfortably, sensing tension they didn't understand. Bryce's expression hardened into the entitled smirk I was beginning to recognize. "I needed those files for competitive analysis. If we're going to stay ahead of Chinese and Russian capabilities, we have to understand current threat landscapes. Those files contain active intelligence on submarine deployments and satellite positioning. They're classified top secret for good reason." Danny Walsh's eyes widened as he realized the conversation had moved far beyond office politics. He excused himself quickly, followed by the other analysts who suddenly remembered urgent tasks elsewhere. Bryce waited until we were alone before stepping closer. "You need to understand something, Rachel. This company is evolving, and people who can't adapt get left behind. My father built this place through innovation, not paranoid hand-wringing about every database query." "Your father built this place by earning government trust through flawless security practices. What you did last night violated federal law." "What I did was take initiative to advance American interests. My algorithms can identify threat patterns human analysts miss, but only with access to comprehensive data sets." I felt like I was arguing with a brick wall painted with Stanford credentials. Even if your intentions are good, the process matters. Classified information has specific handling requirements that exist for reasons written in blood and betrayal. Bryce laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You sound like my father's generation, afraid of progress, hiding behind rules instead of embracing opportunity." That afternoon, I sought out Marcus in the server room where he was updating firewall configurations. The constant hum of cooling fans created a cocoon of white noise that made private conversation possible. "We have a problem," I began, then explained what I discovered about Bryce's activities. Marcus's face grew increasingly grim as I detailed the security violations. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and rubbed his temples. "This isn't the first time," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" 3 weeks ago, someone accessed the Naval Intelligence database using executive credentials. Same pattern, late-night activity, bulk downloads, unauthorized device. You didn't report it. Marcus's laugh carried bitter undertones. I tried. Brought it to Hartwell Sr., but he dismissed it as routine research activities. Said his son was conducting legitimate business analysis. A chill ran down my spine. How many times has this happened? At least 4 incidents I can document. Each time, more sensitive information disappears into whatever black hole Bryce calls research. I stared at the blinking server lights, processing the implications. This wasn't a single mistake by an overeager newcomer. It was a pattern of systematic data extraction that had been hidden and protected by corporate hierarchy. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "Yesterday, Sandra Kim Park from HR approached me privately. Apparently, Hartwell asked her to prepare termination paperwork for a senior security analyst. No names mentioned, but the timing seemed suspicious." My mouth went dry. Sandra had worked in HR for 8 years, building a reputation for fairness and adherence to proper procedures. If she was being asked to fabricate grounds for dismissal, the situation had escalated beyond security violations into active cover-up territory. That evening, I picked up Emma from after-school care and tried to maintain normal conversation during dinner. She chattered about her science project on solar system formation, while I struggled to focus on anything beyond the classified documents sitting unsecured on Bryce's personal computer. "Mommy, you seem worried," Emma observed with the sharp perception that 8-year-olds sometimes possess. "Just thinking about work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." She studied my face with serious brown eyes that reminded me painfully of her father. "Is someone being mean to you?" The question hit harder than I expected. How could I explain that sometimes doing the right thing meant accepting consequences that felt like punishment, that protecting strangers required sacrificing personal safety? "Sometimes adults have disagreements about important things," I said carefully, "but it's always better to do what's right even when it's difficult." After putting Emma to bed, I called my sister Jennifer in Baltimore. She worked as a compliance officer for a pharmaceutical company and understood the challenges of maintaining ethical standards in corporate environments. "Remember when Dad used to say that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing your duty despite being terrified?" Jennifer asked after I'd explained the situation. "I keep hearing his voice telling me that some things matter more than personal comfort." "He'd be proud of you, Rachel, but be smart about this. Document everything, involve the right authorities, and don't try to handle it alone." That night, I created additional encrypted backups of all evidence, storing copies in 3 separate secure locations. If someone tried to silence me or destroy records, the truth would survive. Thursday brought an unexpected visitor. Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Valdez from the Department of Defense Liaison Office appeared at my desk during lunch break. We'd worked together for 2 years reviewing security protocols and investigating minor compliance issues. "Rachel, could we speak privately?" Her tone carried unusual urgency. We walked to an empty conference room where Patricia closed the door and activated the white noise generator used for sensitive discussions. "I'm hearing concerning reports about database access irregularities at your company. Can you tell me what you've observed?" Relief flooded through me as I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Patricia represented the proper channels that could address security violations without corporate interference. "I've documented multiple instances of unauthorized classified data access, all connected to the CEO's son. The company appears to be covering up federal violations." Patricia's expression remained carefully neutral, but I caught a flicker of confirmation in her eyes. "I need you to prepare a comprehensive report with all supporting evidence. This matter may require formal investigation." As she left, I felt the first spark of hope since this nightmare began. The system existed to protect classified information for good reasons, and people like Patricia ensured it functioned despite corporate pressure and family connections. That afternoon brought the confrontation I'd been dreading. CEO Jonathan Hartwell summoned me to his corner office, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Potomac River. His usual calm demeanor had been replaced by barely contained anger. "I understand you have been making accusations about my son's work methods," he began without preamble. "I've documented security violations that require immediate attention and federal notification." Hartwell's face darkened. "Bryce is conducting legitimate research to enhance our competitive capabilities. Your interference is undermining critical company initiatives. Classified information was downloaded to an unauthorized device without proper clearance. That's a federal crime, regardless of intent. My son graduated summa cum laude from Stanford Business School. He understands the implications of his actions better than you apparently understand your place in this organization." The threat wasn't subtle anymore. Hartwell was using his position to intimidate me into silence, betting that job security would outweigh legal obligations. "My place is to protect classified information from unauthorized access. I can't compromise that duty for anyone." Hartwell stood behind his massive oak desk like a judge delivering sentence. "Then perhaps you need to reconsider whether this company is the right fit for your inflexible approach to business innovation." I walked back to my desk on unsteady legs, knowing I'd just sealed my fate. But as I looked around the office where I'd spent 5 years building a career, I felt oddly peaceful. Some principles couldn't be negotiated away no matter the personal cost. Friday morning brought an all-hands meeting that buzzed with unusual tension. Employees filled the main conference room while rumors circulated about major announcements and strategic shifts. I took a seat in the back, watching as Jonathan Hartwell and Bryce entered together, projecting an image of unified family leadership. "Today marks a pivotal moment in TechVantage's evolution," Hartwell Sr. began. "My son Bryce will present his groundbreaking artificial intelligence platform that will revolutionize how we analyze defense intelligence." Polite applause filled the room as Bryce moved to the presentation screen. He'd clearly rehearsed his pitch, speaking confidently about machine learning algorithms and predictive analytics. But as his slides began displaying data visualizations, my blood turned to ice. The charts showed classified submarine patrol patterns, satellite imagery analysis, and signal intelligence summaries that I recognized from the files he'd illegally downloaded. Worse, he was presenting this stolen information as his own innovative research, taking credit for insights generated by intelligence analysts who'd risked their lives gathering the raw data. These breakthrough findings demonstrate how artificial intelligence can identify threat patterns invisible to traditional human analysis, Bryce announced, pointing to a slide showing Chinese naval movements in the South China Sea. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Standing up in the back of the room, I raised my hand. "Excuse me, but could you explain how you obtained the source data for these analyses?" The room fell silent as every head turned toward me. Bryce's confident expression flickered momentarily before reshaping into practiced charm. "Our research team compiled publicly available information using advanced data mining techniques," he replied smoothly. "Those submarine positions are classified top secret. They're not publicly available." Murmurs rippled through the audience as employees realized they were witnessing something far more serious than a routine business presentation. Jonathan Hartwell's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "Miss Thompson, this is neither the time nor place for your disruptive behavior," he snapped. "This is exactly the time to address unauthorized use of classified information in a public presentation. You're displaying stolen government secrets." Bryce stepped forward, his polished demeanor cracking. "I resent the implication that my innovative research methods constitute theft. This data drives American superiority in global intelligence analysis. This data was illegally accessed using your father's credentials and downloaded to an unsecured personal device. That's federal espionage, not innovation." The conference room erupted in shocked whispers as employees grasped the implications. Several people began quietly gathering their belongings, sensing the meeting had veered into dangerous territory. Jonathan Hartwell slammed his hand on the podium. "That's enough, Ms. Thompson. You're dismissed from this meeting immediately. I'm also dismissed from protecting national security because that's what you're asking me to ignore." As I walked toward the exit, Danny Walsh caught my eye. The young analyst looked stricken, realizing he'd been inadvertently feeding information to someone engaged in criminal activity. His face showed the dawning horror of complicity in something far beyond his understanding. That afternoon, I retreated to my apartment and began investigating Bryce's activities more thoroughly. Using open-source intelligence techniques I'd learned in graduate school, I traced his digital footprints across social media and professional networks. What I discovered chilled me to the bone. Bryce had been in contact with representatives from Stratton Global Analytics, a consulting firm based in London with known connections to Chinese state-owned enterprises. Their specialization was competitive intelligence for technology companies seeking advantages in international markets. Email metadata revealed a pattern of communication that aligned perfectly with his database intrusions. Every time Bryce accessed classified files, corresponding messages appeared between him and Stratton, representatives discussing market research opportunities and data monetization strategies. The scope of betrayal was breathtaking. This wasn't a misguided son trying to help his father's company. It was systematic espionage conducted for financial gain. Bryce was selling American military secrets to foreign interests, using family connections to access and steal classified information worth millions on the international intelligence market. I printed everything, creating physical backup copies that couldn't be digitally altered or remotely deleted. The evidence painted a clear picture of premeditated treason disguised as business innovation. Sunday evening brought an unexpected phone call from Marcus. His voice carried barely controlled panic. "Rachel, something's happened. I was running routine server maintenance and discovered massive data transfers occurring right now. Someone's copying entire database structures to external cloud storage." "Which databases?" "Everything. Naval intelligence, Army communications, Air Force satellite data. It's like someone's conducting a complete information harvest." I felt sick. "Can you trace the access point?" "It's coming from Bryce's personal laptop, but he's using a cloud storage service I've never seen before. The data's being uploaded to servers that appear to be located in Eastern Europe." "Can you stop it?" "I could shut down our entire network, but that would alert him that we're watching. Plus, if he's already transferred the really sensitive stuff, the damage might be done." I stared at my reflection in the apartment window, watching the lights of Alexandria twinkle in the darkness. Somewhere across the ocean, foreign intelligence services were gaining access to American military secrets that could cost lives and compromise operations for decades to come. "Marcus, I need you to document everything, but don't interfere yet. We need federal authorities to catch him in the act with evidence that can't be disputed or covered up." Monday morning arrived with ominous clarity. I'd spent the weekend preparing a comprehensive report that detailed every violation, documented the international connections, and provided evidence of systematic espionage. Lieutenant Colonel Valdez had scheduled an emergency meeting for 8 a.m. to review my findings. But as I pulled into the Tech Vantage parking garage, Sandra Kim Park intercepted me near the elevators. "Rachel, I need to warn you about something. Mr. Hartwell called an executive meeting for this morning. Your termination paperwork is already prepared." "What grounds are they claiming?" Sandra's face showed genuine distress. "Insubordination, failure to support company innovation initiatives, and undermining management authority." I tried to argue that proper procedures weren't followed, but he overruled all my objections. I felt strangely calm despite the news. After days of building tension, the approaching confrontation felt almost like relief. "Thank you for the warning, Sandra. You've always been fair to everyone here." At exactly 9 a.m., Jonathan Hartwell's secretary called my desk. "Mr. Hartwell would like to see you in his office immediately." I gathered the printed evidence files and walked toward what I knew would be my final meeting as a Tech Vantage employee. The executive hallway felt longer than usual, lined with photographs showing company milestones and government contract celebrations. Hartwell waited behind his desk, flanked by Bryce and a lawyer I didn't recognize. The setup felt like a tribunal designed to intimidate rather than communicate. Miss Thompson, your behavior over the past week has been completely unacceptable, Hartwell began. You've undermined company leadership, disrupted important meetings, and shown flagrant disregard for innovation initiatives. I've documented federal crimes and attempted to protect classified information from unauthorized access. The lawyer leaned forward. These are serious accusations without supporting evidence. Corporate leaders have broad discretion in managing sensitive information within proper security frameworks. I placed my evidence files on Hartwell's desk. Everything's documented here. Database, access logs, file transfer records, international communications, and cloud storage activities. Your son has been selling classified information to foreign interests. Bryce finally spoke, his voice carrying practiced indignation. These are desperate lies from someone trying to save her job by destroying my reputation. The digital evidence speaks for itself. Jonathan Hartwell's face had turned pale as he glanced at the documents, but his jaw remained set in stubborn denial. You're fired for undermining my son's innovation, he shouted, his composure finally cracking completely. Clear out your desk immediately. Security will escort you from the building. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of 5 years' worth of relationships and achievements dissolving in a single moment. But underneath the sadness, I felt something stronger, the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had done everything possible to protect the secrets entrusted to our care. I understand, Mr. Hartwell, but I want you to know that I've already provided all this evidence to the Department of Defense. They'll be conducting their own investigation regardless of my employment status. The color drained from Bryce's face as the implications hit him. This wasn't just a corporate personnel matter anymore. It was a federal criminal investigation that no amount of family influence could derail. As security escorted me to my desk, I noticed Danny Walsh watching with obvious guilt and confusion. Several other employees avoided eye contact, unwilling to risk their own positions by showing sympathy for someone who'd just been publicly fired. I packed my personal belongings into a cardboard box while reflecting on the strange turns life could take. 5 years ago, I'd walked through these doors filled with ambition and idealism. Now I was leaving as an unemployed whistleblower whose career might be permanently damaged. But as I carried my box toward the exit, Marcus appeared beside me. You did the right thing, he said quietly. Don't ever doubt that. Outside in the parking garage, I sat in my car for several minutes, processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. My phone buzzed with a text message from Lieutenant Colonel Valdez. Received your report. Federal task force activated. Thank you for your courage. For the first time in days, I smiled. Sometimes doing the right thing required losing everything you thought you wanted in order to protect everything that truly mattered. The drive home felt surreal, like moving through a world that had shifted slightly off its axis. I kept my cardboard box of personal belongings on the passenger seat, 5 years of professional life reduced to family photos, a coffee mug Emma had given me for Mother's Day, and a commendation letter from the Department of Defense for excellence in security compliance. At a red light, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my sister Jennifer's number. I heard about the firing through the professional grapevine, she said without preamble. How are you holding up? Honestly, I feel relieved. The waiting and uncertainty were worse than actually losing the job. Do you have any legal protections as a whistleblower? Lieutenant Colonel Valdez connected me with an attorney who specializes in federal employment law. Apparently, there are strong protections for people who report security violations, but the process can take months to resolve. Jennifer's voice carried the protective tone she'd used since childhood whenever she sensed I was in trouble. What about immediate expenses, Emma's school, your mortgage? I have savings for about 3 months, and the attorney says there might be compensation available once the investigation concludes. But right now, everything feels uncertain. That afternoon, I explained the situation to Emma in terms an 8-year-old could understand. We sat on our apartment balcony watching planes approach Reagan National Airport while she processed the news that Mommy wouldn't be going to work for a while. "Did you do something wrong?" she asked with the direct honesty that children possess. "I did what I thought was right, even though it caused problems with my boss. Like when I told Mrs. Henderson that Tommy was cheating on the math test, even though Tommy got mad at me. The analogy struck me as surprisingly accurate. Exactly like that. Sometimes doing the right thing makes people angry, but it's still the right thing to do." Emma nodded seriously. "Grandpa always said you should tell the truth even when it's hard. Your grandfather was a very wise man." That evening, I received an unexpected visit from Danny Walsh. The young analyst stood nervously outside my apartment door, clearly struggling with whatever had brought him to my home. "Ms. Thompson, I need to apologize for something," he began once I'd invited him inside. "Bryce asked me to monitor your computer activities and report anything unusual. I thought it was just routine security assessment, but after today's meeting, I realized I was helping him spy on your investigation." The revelation stung, but Danny's obvious remorse made anger impossible. "What did you tell him?" "I mentioned that you'd been accessing database logs after hours and creating encrypted files. I also said you'd been researching cloud storage regulations and federal whistleblower protections. I'm so sorry. I had no idea what he was really doing." "Danny, you're not responsible for his crimes. But this conversation needs to be reported to the federal investigators. They'll want to document everything about how Bryce gathered information and covered his tracks." Relief flooded the young man's face. "I've been researching attorneys who handle these situations. I want to cooperate fully with any investigation." After Danny left, I spent the evening updating my comprehensive case file with this new information. The pattern of manipulation and surveillance painted an even darker picture of Bryce's criminal enterprise. Tuesday brought a phone call from Marcus that sent chills down my spine. "Rachel, we have a major problem. I've been monitoring network activity since your firing, and Bryce has accelerated his data transfers. He's pulling everything he can access before the investigation shuts him down." "How much information are we talking about?" "Terabytes of classified data spanning 3 years of government contracts, submarine patrol schedules, satellite imagery, communications, intercepts, weapons testing data, enough intelligence to compromise American military operations worldwide." I felt physically sick. While I'd been following proper channels and building evidence, Bryce had been conducting the largest intelligence theft in TechVantage's history. "Can you stop him?" "I could crash the servers, but that would destroy evidence of his activities. Plus, he's using his father's executive credentials, so any interference could be painted as insubordination. Keep documenting everything, but don't take action that could compromise the federal investigation. They need to catch him with irrefutable proof." That afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel Valdez called with an update that provided the first ray of hope in days. "Rachel, I wanted you to know that your report has triggered a joint NSA-FBI task force. They've been monitoring TechVantage's network activities and tracking international communications related to the stolen data." "How long have they been watching?" 6 months. Your company appeared on their radar when suspicious financial transfers were detected between Stratton Global Analytics and Chinese state enterprises. Your evidence confirmed their suspicions and provided the domestic connection they needed. So the investigation was already underway. In preliminary stages, but your documentation and testimony gave them grounds for immediate action. Federal agents will be executing search warrants within 24 hours. I hung up feeling vindicated, but also horrified by the scope of betrayal that had been occurring under our noses. Bryce hadn't stumbled into espionage. He'd been recruited and cultivated by foreign intelligence services who'd identified him as a valuable asset with access to classified American secrets. Wednesday evening brought an unexpected dinner invitation from Sandra Kim Park. We met at a quiet restaurant in Old Town Alexandria where she could speak freely without corporate oversight. "I wanted you to know that several employees have approached me about filing complaints regarding the circumstances of your termination," Sandra said over appetizers. "They believe you were fired illegally for attempting to protect national security." I appreciate their support, but I don't want anyone else to risk their jobs over this. That's exactly why they want to help. You took a stand that none of them felt brave enough to take, and now they're seeing the consequences of corporate leadership putting family loyalty above legal obligations. Sandra's next revelation hit me like a physical blow. There's something else you need to know. Jonathan Hartwell received calls from federal investigators yesterday warning him about suspicious activities at the company. Instead of cooperating, he instructed Bryce to accelerate his data collection efforts. He's actively facilitating the espionage. It appears so. Either he's completely deluded about his son's activities, or he's chosen to protect family over country. Either way, he's now complicit in federal crimes. That night, I lay awake, thinking about the devastating betrayal occurring at the company I'd served faithfully for 5 years. People I'd respected and trusted were actively enabling the theft of secrets that could cost American lives and compromise national security for decades to come. Thursday morning brought the call I'd been both anticipating and dreading. Jonathan Hartwell's voice carried barely controlled rage as he delivered what he clearly intended as a final threat. Ms. Thompson, your malicious accusations have been investigated and found baseless. If you continue spreading lies about my son or this company, you'll face legal action for defamation and corporate sabotage. The evidence speaks for itself, Mr. Hartwell. Federal investigators will determine what's baseless and what's criminal. There are no federal investigators. You've been deceived by your own paranoid delusions into believing conspiracy theories about legitimate business activities. His denial felt desperate rather than convincing. Either he genuinely didn't understand the magnitude of his son's crimes, or he was maintaining plausible deniability while the walls closed in around them. I hope you're right, I said simply. But if you're wrong, innocent people will pay the price for your family's choices. That afternoon, I received a text message from Marcus that made my hands shake. Emergency server maintenance scheduled for tonight. All classified databases being transferred to off-site storage. Federal agents better move fast. I immediately called Lieutenant Colonel Valdez, who listened grimly to this latest development. They're trying to destroy evidence, she said, but it's too late. The task force has been monitoring all their activities and gathering evidence independently. Tomorrow morning will bring some very surprised people to Tech Vantage. As I tucked Emma into bed that night, she asked an innocent question that carried surprising wisdom. Mommy, are the bad people going to be punished? Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes it takes time, but eventually people who do wrong things face consequences for their actions. Good. Grandpa always said that truth wins in the end. Looking down at my daughter's trusting face, I felt a profound sense of peace, despite everything that had been taken from me. Tomorrow would bring justice, vindication, and the knowledge that some principles were worth any personal sacrifice. Outside our window, the lights of Washington, D.C. glittered in the darkness, each one representing someone whose safety depended on protecting the secrets that Bryce Hartwell had been selling to the highest bidder. But not anymore. Friday morning arrived crisp and clear with autumn sunlight streaming through my apartment windows as I prepared Emma for school. I'd slept better than I had in weeks, despite knowing that today would bring the dramatic conclusion to everything that had started with my refusal to compromise security protocols. At 7:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "You need to see the news. Turn on Channel 4. I switched on the television just as Emma finished her breakfast and immediately saw Tech Vantage's building surrounded by black SUVs and unmarked sedans. Yellow tape blocked the parking entrances while men and women in dark suits moved purposefully between vehicles and the main entrance. Federal agents executed search warrants this morning at Tech Vantage Solutions, a major defense contractor based in Arlington, the news anchor reported. Sources indicate the investigation involves allegations of classified information theft and potential espionage activities. Emma looked up from her cereal bowl. "Mommy, isn't that where you used to work?" "Yes, sweetheart. It looks like some very serious people are investigating the problems I was worried about." After dropping Emma at school, I drove toward Tech Vantage despite having no official reason to be there. Something drew me to witness the conclusion of the nightmare that had cost me my career, but potentially saved countless lives. From across the street, I watched federal agents carrying boxes of computer equipment and file cabinets from the building where I'd spent 5 years of my professional life. Employees stood in small groups outside, clearly confused and concerned about what these developments meant for their futures. My phone rang, showing Lieutenant Colonel Valdez's number. "Rachel, I wanted you to know that NSA Director William Thompson is personally overseeing today's operation. Your evidence was instrumental in obtaining the search warrants and building the case." What happens now? The evidence-gathering phase, then formal charges. You should also know that the FBI has identified significant financial transfers from Chinese intelligence services to Bryce Hartwell's personal accounts. This goes far beyond corporate espionage. We're looking at systematic betrayal of national security. At 10:15 a.m., a small convoy of additional vehicles arrived at Tech Vantage. I watched as a distinguished man in his 60s emerged from the lead car, flanked by agents who clearly deferred to his authority. Even from a distance, his bearing suggested someone accustomed to handling matters of national importance. 20 minutes later, Marcus called with details that confirmed my suspicions. "Rachel, you won't believe what just happened. NSA Director Thompson walked into our main boardroom with a full federal task force. Jonathan Hartwell and Bryce were there with their lawyers, probably thinking they could control the narrative." "What did the director say?" "He didn't waste time with pleasantries, looked straight at Hartwell and said, 'Your son uploaded classified data to a public cloud server. This is now a federal crime scene.' Then he pointed at 2 agents and told them to place Bryce under arrest." The words from the thumbnail had finally been spoken, bringing justice to a situation that had spiraled far beyond corporate politics into genuine national security crisis. How did they react? Bryce went completely pale and started claiming it was all a misunderstanding. Jonathan tried to assert that federal agents had no authority to interfere with legitimate business operations. But when they showed him evidence of the financial transfers from Chinese sources, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Jonathan Hartwell had built Tech Vantage through decades of honest work, only to see it destroyed by his son's greed and his own willingness to enable criminal behavior. What about the other employees? Most are being questioned as potential witnesses. Danny Walsh is fully cooperating. He's providing evidence about how Bryce manipulated him into spying on your activities. Sandra Kim Park is documenting the illegal termination procedures she was pressured to implement. Around noon, I watched as federal agents escorted Bryce Hartwell from the building in handcuffs. Despite everything he'd done, seeing someone so young facing decades in federal prison felt sobering rather than triumphant. His father followed 30 minutes later, also in custody, but maintaining the dignified posture of someone who still believed his actions were justified. The contrast between their reactions, Bryce's obvious panic versus Jonathan's stubborn defiance, spoke to different levels of awareness about the magnitude of their crimes. That afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel Valdez called with additional details that revealed the true scope of the investigation. The cloud server Bryce used was hosted by a company with direct ties to Chinese military intelligence. Every file he uploaded was immediately accessed by foreign agents and distributed to multiple international intelligence services. How much damage are we talking about? Preliminary assessment suggests this could be one of the most significant intelligence breaches in recent history. Submarine positions, satellite capabilities, communications protocols, weapons specifications, enough information to compromise American military advantages for years to come. The weight of that revelation settled heavily on my shoulders. If I'd backed down from confronting Bryce's activities, if I'd prioritized job security over security protocols, the damage could have been immeasurably worse. "There's something else you should know," Patricia continued. "The investigation has expanded internationally. Stratton Global Analytics was raided simultaneously in London, and several Chinese nationals have been arrested for espionage activities." By evening, news coverage had expanded from local reports to national headlines. CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC all featured stories about the massive intelligence breach and the federal response. My name wasn't mentioned publicly, but I knew that insiders understood my role in exposing the crimes. Emma and I watched the coverage together during dinner, and she asked questions that demonstrated her remarkable ability to grasp complex situations. The bad people took secrets that could hurt soldiers, she asked. Yes, sweetheart. They stole information that could make it dangerous for our military to protect our country. But you stopped them. I helped other people stop them. Sometimes it takes many people working together to fix big problems. That night, after Emma was asleep, I sat on my balcony reflecting on the extraordinary chain of events that had transformed my life in just 2 weeks. I'd lost my job, faced corporate intimidation, and endured character assassination, but I'd also helped prevent what could have been a catastrophic breach of national security. My phone buzzed with a text message from Danny Walsh. Thank you for showing us what courage looks like. I'll never forget the lesson. Similar messages arrived throughout the evening from current and former Tech Vantage employees who expressed gratitude for my willingness to stand firm when they couldn't find the strength to speak up. As I prepared for bed, I thought about my father and the values he'd instilled through years of bedtime stories about duty, honor, and sacrifice. Colonel James Thompson had served his country through 2 decades of Cold War tensions, always understanding that freedom required vigilant protection from those who would exploit trust and access for personal gain. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as the legal process moved forward, but tonight I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd honored his memory and protected the democracy he'd spent his life defending. Outside my window, the lights of Washington, D.C. sparkled with renewed meaning. Each glow represented someone sleeping safely because classified information remained classified, because naval positions stayed secret, because satellite capabilities remained hidden from hostile nations. Sometimes the greatest victories came disguised as devastating defeats, and sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted led to protecting everything that truly mattered. The following Monday brought a call that changed everything. Attorney Sarah Chen, who specialized in federal whistleblower protection cases, had been monitoring the Tech Vantage investigation and reached out to discuss my legal options. Rachel, based on the evidence and your role in exposing this espionage ring, you have strong grounds for both whistleblower compensation and wrongful termination litigation, she explained during our first meeting at her downtown Washington office. I'm more interested in making sure justice is served than personal compensation. Sarah smiled, her expression reflecting years of working with principled people who'd sacrificed careers for larger causes. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Federal whistleblower statutes provide significant financial protection specifically to encourage people like you to report security violations despite personal cost. Over the next 2 weeks, details of Bryce Hartwell's criminal enterprise emerged through court filings and media reports. The scope of his betrayal exceeded even my worst fears. Financial records revealed that Chinese intelligence services had paid him over $2 million across 18 months for classified information. His innovation project was actually a sophisticated data mining operation designed to identify and steal the most valuable secrets from American defense contractors. The cloud server he'd used was operated by a front company that immediately transmitted every uploaded file to servers in Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran. Within hours of stealing submarine positions, foreign naval forces were repositioning to exploit the intelligence. Satellite capabilities that had taken decades to develop were being replicated by hostile nations within months. Marcus called one afternoon with news that brought the investigation full circle. Remember Danny Walsh, the kid who felt so guilty about spying on you? He's become a key witness for the prosecution. His testimony about how Bryce manipulated employees is helping build the case for systematic criminal conspiracy. How's he handling the pressure? Better than expected. Turns out having a chance to make things right has given him confidence he never had before. He told me that watching you stand up to corporate intimidation taught him that doing the right thing matters more than keeping your job. 3 weeks after the arrests, I received an unexpected visit from NSA Director William Thompson himself. He arrived at my apartment with minimal security detail, clearly intending the meeting to be personal rather than official. Ms. Thompson, I wanted to thank you personally for your courage in exposing this espionage operation, he said once we were seated in my living room. Your actions prevented what could have been catastrophic damage to American national security. I just did what my training and conscience required, sir. Director Thompson's weathered face reflected decades of protecting secrets in an increasingly dangerous world. Unfortunately, many people in similar situations choose personal safety over national duty. Your willingness to sacrifice your career probably saved American lives. He paused, studying my modest apartment with its secondhand furniture and Emma's artwork on the refrigerator. I understand you're currently unemployed due to the retaliation you faced. Yes, sir, but my attorney believes there will be compensation through whistleblower protection programs. There will be, but I'd like to discuss something more immediate. The NSA is establishing a new position for corporate security compliance oversight. We need someone with your technical skills and demonstrated integrity to help prevent future incidents like Tech Vantage. The offer stunned me. Working directly for the National Security Agency represented the pinnacle of cybersecurity careers, an opportunity that would provide both financial security and the chance to protect classified information on a national scale. I'm honored by the offer, Director Thompson. Could I have time to consider the implications for my daughter? Of course, take all of the time you need, but I want you to know that your country recognizes your sacrifice and wants to ensure you have the opportunity to continue serving. That evening, I discussed the offer with Emma, explaining that Mommy might have a chance to work for people who protect our country's most important secrets. Would we have to move? She asked, her 8-year-old mind focusing on the practical concerns that mattered most to her. No, sweetheart, the job would be here in Washington and you could stay at the same school. Would you be helping catch more bad people like the ones who tried to hurt the soldiers? Yes, I'd be working to stop people from stealing secrets that could hurt our country. Emma considered this seriously. I think Grandpa would want you to take the job. He always said protecting people was the most important work anyone could do. 2 days later, formal charges were filed against both Hartwell men. Bryce faced 17 counts of espionage, each carrying potential life sentences. Jonathan was charged with obstruction of justice conspiracy to commit espionage and violation of federal security regulations. The media coverage was extensive but respectful, focusing on the systematic nature of the intelligence theft rather than sensationalizing personal details. Several news outlets interviewed cybersecurity experts who praised the importance of employee vigilance in protecting classified information. Sandra Kim Park called to update me on the aftermath at Tech Vantage. The company is essentially finished, she reported sadly. All government contracts have been suspended, and most employees are looking for new positions. But there's something positive. Several major defense contractors have reached out specifically requesting to hire people who worked here, saying they want employees with proven integrity. What about Marcus? He's been offered a senior position at Lockheed Martin, partly based on his cooperation with the investigation. Apparently, his willingness to support your efforts rather than protect his own job impressed their security leadership. A month after the arrests, the trial proceedings began with plea negotiations. Bryce's attorneys attempted to argue that he was manipulated by Chinese agents who exploited his youth and inexperience, but the evidence of systematic criminal planning over 18 months undermined any claims of victimization. During victim impact statements, Lieutenant Colonel Valdez testified about the potential consequences of the stolen intelligence. The defendant's actions compromised submarine patrol patterns that protect American naval forces worldwide. Satellite capabilities that took 30 years to develop are now being replicated by hostile nations. Communications protocols used by special forces operating in dangerous regions have been completely compromised, requiring expensive and time-consuming replacement. When my turn came to address the court, I looked directly at Bryce Hartwell and saw not a master spy, but a young man who'd chosen money over duty and personal gain over national service. Your Honor, I don't take satisfaction in seeing anyone face such serious consequences, especially someone so young. But I hope Mr. Hartwell's case sends a clear message that accessing classified information for personal profit isn't innovation, it's treason. The secrets he sold weren't abstract data points. They were the protection that allows American service members to come home safely to their families. Bryce received 15 years in federal prison, plus lifetime prohibition from accessing classified information. His father got 8 years and forfeiture of all TechVantage assets. The sentences felt proportionate to the damage they'd caused while offering some hope for eventual redemption. 3 days after the sentencing, I accepted Director Thompson's offer to join the NSA as Senior Corporate Compliance Analyst. My first assignment would be developing new protocols to prevent insider threats at defense contractors, essentially turning my TechVantage experience into a system for protecting other companies from similar infiltration. Emma and I celebrated that evening with dinner at her favorite restaurant, where she proudly told the waitress that her mommy was going to work for the government, catching bad guys who tried to steal secrets. As we walked home through the quiet streets of Alexandria, I reflected on how dramatically our lives had changed in just 2 months. I'd lost a job, but gained a career, sacrificed security, but found purpose, faced intimidation, but discovered courage I hadn't known I possessed. The street lights illuminated our path toward home, where tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to serve something larger than personal ambition. Sometimes the hardest decisions led to the most meaningful destinations. 6 months later, I stood in my new office at the National Security Agency overlooking the Potomac River from the 23rd floor of a building whose existence wasn't officially acknowledged. My title was Senior Corporate Security Compliance Analyst, but my real job was preventing future incidents like the TechVantage disaster. The work proved more rewarding than anything I'd experienced in corporate cybersecurity. Instead of protecting one company's classified contracts, I was helping safeguard the entire defense contractor network that kept America secure. My days involved reviewing security protocols, investigating anomalous activities, and training other analysts to recognize the warning signs of insider threats. Emma had adapted beautifully to our new circumstances. The financial stability of federal employment allowed me to enroll her in advanced mathematics programs that challenged her growing intellect. More importantly, she took obvious pride in telling classmates that her mother worked to protect national security. "Mommy catches people who try to steal secrets from our soldiers," she explained to her teacher during a career day presentation. "She makes sure the bad guys can't hurt the good guys who protect our country." The whistleblower compensation had exceeded my attorney's projections, providing enough financial security to purchase a modest house in Falls Church with a backyard where Emma could play safely. But the money mattered less than the knowledge that my sacrifice had prevented immeasurable damage to American interests. Marcus Rivera had indeed found an excellent position with Lockheed Martin, where his reputation for ethical leadership opened opportunities for rapid advancement. We maintained our friendship through regular coffee meetings where we discussed the ongoing evolution of cybersecurity challenges. "You know what I learned from watching you take on the Hartwells?" he said during one such conversation. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what's right despite being terrified of the consequences." Danny Walsh had emerged from the TechVantage scandal as something of a hero among younger cybersecurity professionals. His willingness to testify against Bryce despite professional risks had earned respect throughout the defense contractor community. Several companies had competed to hire him, recognizing that his experience with insider threat detection made him uniquely valuable. I think about that morning when you confronted Bryce in the break room. He told me during an industry conference where we'd both been invited to speak about corporate security. "You could have stayed quiet and kept your job, but you chose to protect something bigger than personal comfort." That's the standard I try to meet every day now. The Tech Vantage case had indeed become a catalyst for industry-wide security reforms. New regulations required enhanced monitoring of executive access to classified systems, mandatory reporting of suspicious financial activities, and stronger protections for employees who reported security violations. Congress had passed legislation inspired partly by the intelligence breach, creating clearer pathways for corporate whistleblowing and ensuring that family connections couldn't shield anyone from accountability for espionage activities. Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Valdez had been promoted to full colonel, partly based on her skilled handling of the investigation. She occasionally consulted with my NSA team on cases involving potential intelligence breaches at defense contractors. Your willingness to risk everything for duty reminded me why I chose military service, she said during one such collaboration. Sometimes we need examples of ordinary people making extraordinary choices to remember what we're really protecting. Jonathan Hartwell had been released after serving 4 years of his sentence, broken by the loss of his company and the magnitude of his son's betrayal. I'd heard through professional networks that he'd found work as a security consultant, helping small firms avoid the mistakes that had destroyed his life's work. Bryce remained in federal prison, where he'd reportedly become something of a cautionary tale for other inmates. His case was studied in business schools as an example of how privilege and entitlement could lead to catastrophic moral failures. On the first anniversary of my firing from Tech Vantage, Emma and I visited the Arlington National Cemetery where my father was buried. Standing beside Colonel James Thompson's headstone, I felt his presence and approval for the choices I'd made. I told him about your new job, Emma said seriously, placing a small American flag beside the military marker. I think he's proud that you protected the secrets like he did when he was a soldier. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Sandra Kim Park, who'd found a position with a nonprofit organization that advocated for corporate transparency and ethical governance. I wanted you to know that Tech Vantage officially closed today, she said. The building has been sold and the remaining assets distributed to creditors. It feels like the end of an era. How are you feeling about everything? Sad for all the good people who lost their jobs, but grateful that someone had the courage to expose what was happening before it got even worse. You probably saved the company from becoming completely synonymous with treason. As I tucked Emma into bed that night, she asked a question that had clearly been on her mind for some time. Mommy, do you ever miss your old job? Sometimes I miss the people I worked with, but I don't miss feeling like I had to choose between doing what was right and keeping my job. Are you happy with your new job? Very happy, sweetheart. I get to help protect our country every day, and I work with people who understand that some things are more important than money or personal success. Emma smiled sleepily. I'm proud of you for being brave when it was scary. Looking down at my daughter's trusting face, I felt the profound satisfaction that comes from living according to principles rather than convenience. The last year had taught me that integrity wasn't just about personal character. It was about protecting the democratic values that allowed children like Emma to sleep safely in their beds. 6 months later, I was invited to address the graduating class of Georgetown University's cybersecurity program, speaking about the practical application of ethics in high-stakes professional environments. You'll face moments in your careers when doing the right thing conflicts with personal advancement, I told the assembled students. You'll encounter situations where speaking up could cost you everything you've worked to achieve. In those moments, remember that your choices echo far beyond your individual circumstances. I paused, looking out at young faces filled with ambition and idealism that reminded me of my own graduation 15 years earlier. I learned that doing the right thing often costs everything in the short term, but protects everything that truly matters in the long term. When we choose courage over comfort, we don't just save ourselves, we save everyone whose safety depends on our integrity. Sometimes the greatest victories come disguised as our worst defeats. After the speech, a young woman approached me with a question that took me back to my own early career uncertainties. Ms. Thompson, how do you find the strength to risk everything for principles that feel abstract? They're not abstract when you remember that classified information protects Real people with real families who depend on secrets staying secret. Every time you're tempted to compromise security for convenience, think about the service members whose lives hang in the balance. Driving home that evening, I reflected on the journey that had transformed me from a corporate security analyst into someone whose story was being studied by the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. The path hadn't been comfortable, but it had been purposeful. Emma was waiting up for me, excited to hear about the university visit and proud that her mother was inspiring young people to choose integrity over personal gain. "Did you tell them about how the bad guys went to jail?" she asked while we shared a bedtime snack. I told them that sometimes protecting what matters most requires risking what you think you need most. That's like superhero stuff, isn't it? The best kind of superhero stuff, the kind that real people can do when they decide that protecting others matters more than protecting themselves. As I turned off Emma's bedroom light, I felt the quiet contentment that comes from knowing your choices have made the world marginally safer for the people you love. Outside our window, the lights of Washington, D.C. twinkled with renewed meaning, each glow representing someone sleeping peacefully because classified information remained classified, because naval positions stayed secret, because satellite capabilities remained hidden from hostile nations. The Tech Vantage case had taught me that courage isn't a single dramatic moment, but a series of smaller choices to prioritize duty over comfort, truth over convenience, and protection over profit. When we make those choices consistently, we build the kind of character that can withstand any pressure and the kind of legacy that inspires others to stand firm when their own moments of testing arrive. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most meaningful destinations, and sometimes losing everything you think you want teaches you to recognize everything that truly matters. What would you do if choosing between your career and your principles meant protecting strangers you'd never meet? Have you ever faced a situation where doing the right thing required sacrificing something important to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences might inspire someone else facing a difficult choice. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to hear more stories about courage and integrity, and share it with someone who might need to hear that doing the right thing always matters, even when it costs everything. Remember that your choices today shape the world your children will inherit tomorrow. Until next time, may you always find the strength to choose principle over convenience. And may you never doubt that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary good when they refuse to compromise their values.